Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every other Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Alright, Kim, we are going to get into our discussion of Beauty and the Beast, the tale as old as time. This was written by Marty Noxon and directed by James Whitlow Jr. And the DVD blurb is Buffy's... That is not a sentence. What did I write there? Quick pause as I pull out the DVD to check the blurb and see where I messed up. Buffy's fear that Oz could have killed a student during a full moon is compounded when she runs into Angel, violent and feral, during her nightly patrol. That's a sentence.
Yeah.
That is indeed a sentence. Probably still not the way I would have worded it, but it's a sentence. Gotta give him that.
Yeah.
I wrote Buffy's fear that Oz could have killed a student, so minor typo. All right, so we start with a voiceover, which means that this is going to be a very deep and profound episode that we both love, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's gonna be the next Passion.
Although this is one of those episodes, and these happen a lot, where before I rewatch it to prepare, I'm thinking I really didn't like this when it was kind of boring.
Mm-hmm.
And then I rewatch it, and I'm like, that one was actually pretty good.
I still don't like this episode.
Well, I don't love it, and it's not going to be a favorite.
Didn't think I liked it, and I was correct.
I don't. It was not as bad as I remember it being.
Yeah, we're gonna get into probably a longer discussion than honestly either of us are prepared for. So we
tend to do that on the ones we don't.
Yeah,
that aren't favorites. Yeah,
the mixed feelings episodes. And there's honestly just a lot in this episode. So let's jump right in. We've got Buffy doing voiceover of Call of the Wild as it's kind of like rushing through the woods. And then we cut to the library where Willow is reading said book to Werewolf Oz as he leaps against the cage door and rattles it at her. Because he's so enraged by the rabbits. She says maybe we should read a less stimulating passage. And this is when Private Harris reports for duty.
And I'm just going to point out that we have these high school students entering and leaving the school in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. And, apparently there's no locked doors or security systems or anything in their way. Mm-hmm. Just pointing that out.
Yes. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. Xander mentions that we are reading the Cliff Notes of Call of the Wild for English class. And Willow says, some of us. And then tells him to read it to Oz to help him to help Xander stay awake. And don't mention the rabbits.
Don't mention the rabbits.
And then she tells him that he's already had his 2:00 feeding.
Yeah.
What are they feeding Werewolf Oz while he's a werewolf? Does he have to eat? Can he not go the whole night without eating? And
maybe it
also,
soothes
what
him?
Was his feeding?
Maybe it soothes him. I just imagine just a hunk of raw beef. Just chuck it in there.
And see, I was imagining dog food.
Dog food?
What else would they give him
give him some little treats, a rawhide bone.
I know it's what popped into my head when she said that was a dog food dish, and I'm like,
I mean, he is part wolf. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. Well, okay. So not only are we entering and leaving the school at 2 and 3 a.m., we are also bringing half a dead cow in too. And it's just fine. And no evidence left.
No.
That's...
Werewolf Oz is a very clean eater. Does not make a mess at all. Will not take a bite until he has a napkin around his neck.
Well, and she says this, he's already had his 2 o'clock feeding, like he has more than one feeding. Like he has a 12 o'clock feeding and a 2 o'clock and a 4 o'clock. You know, they feed him all night.
Yeah, it's like a baby. You gotta get those regular feedings. I wonder if that's an actual, like, truthfully, I didn't put any thought into that at all. I just brushed right by that. But I could see that being an actual strategy for keeping a werewolf kind of satiated throughout the night by feeding them just hunks of meat. I mean, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, as they're kind of moving past that conversation, as they're having their back and forth, Willow mentions that they have the trank dart gun at the ready in case anything should happen, but nothing's gonna happen. And yeah, Xander pretty much just takes over, says he's absolutely got this, no worries, and then pretty much falls asleep as soon as she's gone.
Yes. I'm going to point out in the script book, he's not quite as much of a bad guy as he is in the episode. Because in the script book, it says that he sits down and starts reading the book and then dozes off. Mm-hmm. But in the episode, I mean, he basically...
He purposefully goes to bed.
Lays down on purpose. He's going to sleep. And then we move to Buffy and Faith walking together. And they're discussing whether or not they're going to run into kids making out. And Faith kind of steers the conversation towards Scott, wanting to know what's going on with him. Have they been making out? And Buffy comments that her most favorite thing about him is that he doesn't seem to be some sort of hell beast. And then Faith replies that all men are beasts. Mm-hmm. And Buffy makes a joke about being cynical. And Faith just says it's realistic. And they all have beast in them. And they're all in it for the chase. And I mean, honestly, it is really cynical. Like, I know Faith didn't, like when we hear background and stuff about Faith, she didn't have the best mom and the best upbringing, but she still is. How old is Faith supposed to be? I know it says she dropped out of school, so. Yeah,
I always envisioned her being just slightly younger than Buffy. And I don't know why that is, but just slightly younger than Buffy.
She seems older than Buffy to me. I don't know if she's supposed to be or not, but she, I guess, just kind of world weary makes her seem older or something.
Maybe.
I don't know. So we can probably say she's between 16 and 20.
Yeah, sure.
She's probably not younger than 16. She's probably not older than 20.
Oh, yeah. She's definitely would be in that age range.
Okay. So she is really, really cynical for a girl that age.
Yeah. So we've seen Buffy be this cynical, though. And it was just like a passing thing. But Buffy had an episode in season 2 where she was just like, all men are the worst. And they're just all awful. So, I mean, but Buffy's had her fleeting moments of cynicism as well.
I see a difference in just fleeting moments when you say that. Mm-hmm. But Faith seems to deep down believe it.
This is a philosophy that we see Faith carry throughout. She basically repeats this exact same speech to Spike in season 7. I mean, so yeah, it's at her core. This is kind of, and she has that whole back and forth with Wood about there are actually decent guys out there. It is something that is part of her character for sure.
Yeah, it is. I thought a lot about it when I was watching, and it just this conversation kind of makes me want to have a Faith origin story. Mm-hmm. There is how did she meet her watcher?
Let me. Oh my God, we're never gonna get anywhere on this episode.
Anyway,
no, wait.
As cynical as Faith is, I kind of don't see her believing her watcher when she's first told about vampires and slayers and stuff. She's so cynical. She thinks it's some kind of scam or something.
Okay.
I would love to see that.
I found what I was looking for. Go Ask Malice is a book that exists. That's essentially Faith's story before she came to Sunnydale.
Is it canon?
I mean, I guess it's canon as any of the Buffy books are.
Okay, Go Ask Malik.
Malice. Malice. Alice with an M at the beginning.
Okay.
It's very expensive.
Is it?
Yeah. I think it's pretty like sold out everywhere.
I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. Anyway, I still have like 5 things to talk about in this scene.
Okay.
So no, I feel like, yes, Faith is very cynical and all of this, but I feel like this is also kind of a true statement of how the Buffyverse perceives men overall. And I've heard, I think it was just somebody in a random comment that like my mind a little bit. But the fact that so many of the men in Buffy are framed to have a dark side or to have this kind of bestial side or whatnot. And then you have Oz. And Oz is like the perfect guy, right? He's just so sweet and so genuine and so honest. And 3 nights out of the month, he turns into a literal beast because you have to show that side of man no matter what. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, oh, okay, cool. But then I would also say that I feel like this could be applied to the women of the Buffyverse as well, and we tend to fixate on just the animal side of the men, or perhaps like more aware of it, like more accepting of the animal side. And this is all in canon. Like, this isn't talking about real people. This is all canon in the Buffyverse philosophies that have been talked about, and like the stupid boys will be boys kind of stuff that happens on occasion in the Buffyverse. Whereas that can also be applied to the women. Like, every woman in the Buffyverse has a dark side as well. Like, I mean, that's just the way it is. So then you have this kind of weird, again, double standard that may exist. But I'm going to jump ahead again to season 6, where Buffy actually rejects the idea of being called an animal. Like, flat out is super offended and leaves when Spike calls her an animal. But like, what is the negative of having some like animalistic bestial side of you? Like, how do you define that, and what is it? Why is it inherently a negative thing? And kind of the thoughts going forward in the Buffyverse at large, because it seems like everybody has those, bestial needs to some degree. And you talk about like vampires' needs for blood, a person's need for touch. I mean, that's a kind of a theme in season 7 with the first not being able to touch. There's just bestial needs that come down to it. So it's cynical, sure. And the way that Faith is framing it is definitely on the negative side. But it's also like, if you just break it down and really look at it, it's kind of a true thing. Like, everybody has beast in them.
True. Yeah.
The other thing I have to say, which is not nearly as deep, but they describe Scott in this scene as a muffin. Uh-huh. Blueberry, yeah, with that crunchy munchy stuff on top. So, this begs the question. If you were to describe Angel, Riley, and Spike as muffins, what kind of muffins would they be?
Oh. Okay.
It has to be asked.
Yeah.
So here's my thought. I'll put it out there. I put you on the spot.
I've got some ideas forming in my head.
So, Angel's just gotta be like a bitter chocolate muffin. Just really? Super bitter. Riley is just like a plain muffin, but kind of one of those that's weirdly like oversized.
Yeah, I get that.
And Spike,
like he's a corn muffin.
Yeah, Spike is
not Spike, Riley.
Spike is banana nut. I have no specific reasons why.
Okay.
That's my thought process.
Okay, now why is Angel?
Because he's a broody boy. He's a broody boy that sits in the corner and is bitter all the time.
Oh, okay. I got you. Okay, so when you said that about muffins, so I immediately start thinking of how I would describe each of them as a muffin. And I was thinking about like appearances and sex appeal and stuff. Mm-hmm. You're doing personality.
Yeah.
So
Riley as a corn muffin is good though.
Oh yeah, Riley's corn muffin.
Like a really big, like one of those where you like start and you think you're gonna get a normal sized muffin and you put it in the oven and you pull it out and it explodes.
Yeah.
And it's just oddly shaped and large. Man. All right.
What are we talking about?
That was my fun experiment. Let's move on.
Okay.
So there's a boy running in panic, and then a creature growls, ooh, and the boy looks back, and he trips, and there's something, and it jumps on him, and it drags him away, and the boy screams loudly, and then we move on from there. I summarized that beautifully, I think. And then we're back at the high school.
Yeah, we have Buffy, Willow, and Oz, who are walking in the school mid-talk, and Willow is basically saying that every guy's not in it for the chase. And then Scott comes up, walks up and says, hey, I like how they make Scott so adorably dorky.
Yeah.
It's just fun for me. He comes up and says, hey, and then two more friends, Pete and Debbie, come over.
Mm-hmm.
And they all start talking to each other. And this is the first time that we've met Pete or Debbie.
Mm-hmm.
And the episode kind of ends up being mostly about them, which I think is awkward.
Yeah.
But,
and speaking of awkward, like this is where I really started to have like a disconnect. And I'm not really sure if it's just because we don't have enough time to build Pete and Debbie's characters or what it is, but like every bit of dialogue in this scene just feels off, even by like our regulars that just bounce off of each other so easily. Like there's not a bit of dialogue in this scene where I'm just like, that seems natural. It's just all awkward.
I agree, but they have a little convo about jazz band, and then Buffy notices that Debbie is holding flowers. And Buffy says, those are pretty. And Debbie says, thanks, Pete bought them for me. And then Pete makes kind of a, aw, shucks. I'm sure Scott does that stuff for you too, Buffy. And Scott's like, no, we're not up to flowers. Are we up to flowers? Did I miss flowers? Which, he's so adorable.
Yeah.
He will never make it as a Scooby. He's so adorable.
But also, I like how he's just like, did we miss flowers? Are we up to flowers? And I'm just like,
yeah, I love it.
You gave
so sweet.
But he gave her jewelry already.
Yeah. But that was as a friend.
That was as a friend. That was friend jewelry. That's true.
Yeah. Friend.
Dating jewelry is different.
She says no. And then Debbie and Buffy talk about having to see the school counselor, Mr. Platt. And they talk about how they really don't want to or like him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie says that she's flunking her biology class, and Oz is like, hey, I aced that, and you want my notes? And Debbie says yeah. And then they all kind of split up, and Buffy, Willow, and Oz kind of walk off on their own again. And then we have a very, very long scene that is cut out. I mean, like, it's 2 pages.
Okay,
so they start to go off in different directions, and Buffy gives Scott a quick kiss on the lips before they part. That we see that happening. And then as they walk off, Willow says, okay, you, Scott, school kiss. And Buffy says, it's not a big deal. We've kissed before. And Willow says, but in the dark, alone. A school kiss is a whole nother deal. It's statement-y. It says, hey, peers, we're smooching. And Buffy says, do you think it was too much? And then Oz jumps in and he says, I thought it was right. It said, nice seeing you, not take me now. Now, not that I have anything against a take me now kiss, mind you, but it's not very school. Willow says, totally, that kind of kiss in school is all about showing off. The haves rubbing it in the faces of the have-nots. So now they're at Willow's locker, and Willow stops to go through her locker, and Oz stays there with her. Buffy continues moving down the hall and says, oh, so I'm good. Yeah, I think I'm good. And then she's gone. And then we see Willow and Oz together. And Willow says, I'm not sure I completely understand. What was the first kind of kiss? And Oz says, oh, that would be the nice seeing you kiss. And Willow says, oh, and how does that go? And Oz smiles and then leans in and kisses her sweetly but quickly. And then says, nice seeing you. Of course, it can be a fine line. The nice to see you kiss can easily morph into, and now he gives her a slightly longer, more intense kiss. And then says, really nice seeing you. And if you aren't careful, that becomes, and then they just like start frantically making out with each other.
Okay.
And that was all cut out. Just a cute little Oz and Willow scene.
It's a lot cuter than I thought it was going to be. I thought the direction it was leading was that they were going to complain about the people who do too much PDA at school and then walk up on Xander and Cordelia just macking on each other.
I could have seen it going that way too.
Xander is not, in fact, making out with Cordelia, but he is instead being scolded for being a terrible, terrible watch. Giles is panicking. He says they need to recheck every possible exit as Willow and Oz come into the library. And yeah, basically, it is figured out that Xander may have not spent the entire evening awake.
Yes, and they discover that a window is open. Mm-hmm. And Xander mentions that he never heard Oz leave, and he was there in the morning when and Giles says, woke up, and he says it mad.
Yeah.
Like, he is mad
Mad Dad.
But then it just kind of stops. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. We never see him actually say anything to Xander about it or anything like that.
Yeah. See,
which I kind of wish I'd seen.
Yeah. Here's the thing about the Giles and Xander relationship is we get a lot of conflict. We never really get closure between them ever, I think. And this was a similar thing in like Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, where there is a lot of conflict and no closure at all between those two characters. And, you know, some Giles Xander closure would be nice. But I just honestly don't know if Giles cares enough.
Yeah.
But anyway, in their discussions, they mention that there was a male student that was found in the woods, and they mention his name, and Oz knows him, Jeff Orkin, which continues to show that Oz actually does have a social life outside of the Scoobies.
Yeah. That's what he's doing when they're together and he's not with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically, a lot of the scene is just Oz kind of processing
that he might have killed somebody, yeah.
There is this nice little moment where Oz kind of walks over to Willow, and Willow's he's almost like, obviously Oz is like freaking out internally, but he's so like composed, and he takes the moment to like go and like be with Willow to allow the two of them to comfort each other. It's a really like just a nice showing of their relationship.
Okay, and then the next scene is Buffy going for her counseling appointment with Mr. Platt. I don't really like this scene. I know that we have it so that we could see what Buffy is thinking and everything about the stuff that happened in this episode, but I don't find Mr. Platt a very good counselor, and like everything he says is like cliched and overdone and just, it's not useful at all. But they have a talk, and Mr. Platt kind of convinces her to tell him what's going on. And she talks about how she was seeing this guy, and it ended badly, and her mom and her were fighting, and the guy changed and got mean, and she didn't stop loving him. Mm-hmm. And then he does this thing about how you can get lost in love, but you can't stay lost. You have to, find yourself. And Buffy says, and if you can't, and he says, if you can't, love becomes your master and you're just its dog. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, really? Like, how is that helpful?
Yeah.
Like, how is that helpful in this situation at all? He is a really bad high school counselor.
It's interesting because, like, it's clear he was written to serve the theme that they're going for rather than written as a high school counselor, which is probably more entertaining as a viewer because an actual, like, high school counseling session isn't that fun to watch, I guess. But,
well, watching this was kind of cringy.
He, basically is just there to point out hey, Buffy's still struggling with identity. Yep. You remember that Anne episode we did? Yep. Okay, she's still struggling. Cool. Just want to make sure you understood that.
Yeah, basically. And it's kind of like thrown in your face.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's also...
I think they could have done it in a different way better.
Yeah.
Like, done it...
Well, they do. Later in this very same season, when Spike says that he loves bitch and implies that Buffy and Angel are the same.
Yeah, true.
It is exactly the same speech, but it's done so much better.
Okay, so then Buffy goes to the library and sees everybody in there being all upset. And she's like, I'm afraid to ask. And Cordelia says, Oz ate someone last night. Which is wonderful. And then they have a little talk about what happened and everything and how they're going to try and figure out what happened. And Buffy says that she'll patrol the woods and that Willow and the others need to go to the morgue to see if it's actually a werewolf kill. Mm-hmm. And then Willow says, but what about Oz? And Giles says, why don't we have Faith come watch over him? And Oz says, you're having a Slayer watch over me? Good thing we're not overreacting, which I find funny for some reason.
Like, it just seems out of character, because I feel like Oz would want someone capable watching him if he thinks he's getting out and hurting people.
I don't know. I thought it was funny the way he says it. That didn't occur to me, but yeah, you would think Oz would. And then he wants to leave, and Willow kind of follows him to stop him.
You know that thing where you bail in the middle of an upsetting conversation? I have to do that. It's kind of dramatic, I know, but sometimes it's a necessary guy thing.
Mm-hmm. This section is at least them acknowledging that they're kind of doing something a little different with Oz.
And Willow kind of points out, I want you to do the guy thing, but, sun's going down. And Oz kind of realizes he can't leave. He's got to get in the cage. And in the script, it says that he has a struggle with himself because he wants to just go ahead and leave, but instead he goes to the cage. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that idea, but I didn't really see it in the episode.
Yeah. I think what they were going for is that even when he's not the wolf, he still feels the wolf's pull during that time of the month. So even during the day, he's more aggressive. And I think that that's a cool canon for the way werewolves work. That even like when you're fully human, you still got some of that aggression kind of brewing underneath. And obviously the werewolf lore gets really mixed up later on in like season 4 and it goes all kinds of crazy. But yeah, I think that's what they were going for, but they didn't really translate it when they filmed it. It just feels out of character to Oz rather than the werewolf being aggressive, which I think is what they were kind of going for, is that werewolf was being aggressive or making Oz more aggressive kind of deal.
Uh-huh.
Because he's got beast in him. All men have beast in them. So, speaking of beastly men, that night, Buffy is patrolling, and lots of whooshing sounds around her as a figure runs back and forth and knocks her down and runs off and then turns back, and it's Angel! And he growls and snarls, and there's blood around his mouth. So, just gonna say, full beast Angel, feral, wild Angel, put pants on?
Yeah, I noticed that too. That is also in my notes. Yeah. He apparently found pants, but did not find a shirt.
Yeah.
The scene where he looks back and she sees him for the first time and realizes it's Angel. Mm-hmm. She looks shocked. But the level of shock, like, I don't even know if it was possible to have enough shock on her face for this moment. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know that they could have done anything where I would have been like, oh, yeah, that's the right amount of shock. But, yeah, it's not enough.
It wasn't this. They didn't do enough. We can guarantee that much.
Yeah. So he knocks into her again and knocks her down, and they kind of fight a little bit. She knocks the wind. She, like, swings down from a tree and knocks the wind out of him and then punches him, and he passes out. And then in the script, it says that she sees a large number of eviscerated animal carcasses all over the ground by the mansion.
I was wondering if there was something in the script to explain the blood, because we did not really get that in the episode. All right, so now we go to a favorite Sunnydale hotspot, the morgue, where Willow is...
They've also managed to get into in the middle of the night, again.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
This is a counter that we never started for a very specific reason, as the amount of times doors just aren't locked when they should be. Because it's like
every episode. Yeah. Every episode.
Willow is looking over the body lockers and opens the one containing Jeff, and she has a Scooby-Doo lunchbox for her little tools. And it's so cute.
And in the script, it says she opens a plastic lunchbox, and in parentheses, it has Scooby-Doo with a question mark. So they managed to find one.
They got it. They got the permission to have Scooby-Doo branded merch in their show.
They basically have a talk while Willow gets her evidence, and she gets stuff from under the nails and gets some hair off the body, and Xander and Cordelia make noises about how gross it is.
Yeah.
And Willow's all business.
I don't feel like that body's nearly gross enough for the amount that they're reacting, because, I mean...
Yeah, I don't think so.
Xander and Cordelia have seen some stuff.
Yeah.
They've got to have some level of tolerance at this point.
Yeah. Okay, and so then Willow basically says that we've got everything we need, and then faints.
Yeah, which is also weird.
I feel like that there was probably more to that scene, or like a continuation about why she fainted that got cut out or something, but there's nothing in the script.
Uh-huh.
But like, doesn't it really seem like you're missing something? Like, why does she faint? What is the...
I think the idea is that it's so grotesque, and it's, if the body was like truly grotesque, but there's only so much you could show on TV, I get it. But if the body was truly gross, like just the grossest thing, and Xander and Cordelia are like sitting here and Willow's just like holding it in because she's got to get the job done, right? That's the idea.
Uh-huh.
She's got to get the job done because she's got to figure out what's going on and hopefully prove Oz innocent. You know, that's what she's working on. And so she's so focused on that she can ignore those same feelings, those barf-worthy feelings that Xander and Cordelia are feeling until the job's done, and then she faints. But the body just isn't convincing enough for that to be the reaction for these three.
I mean, that makes sense. That's the only... I mean, it makes more sense than anything I thought of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't really get that impression because the body is just like just a body.
Yeah.
And we all know they've had plenty of experiences with bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go to a new scene and we never ever get any more explanation about that and why she fainted. It's just over. The next scene is Buffy dragging Angel into the mansion and finding shackles to chain him up with.
You gotta love Buffy for just understanding Drusilla well enough to be like, oh, that's her dolls and there's a trunk underneath it. She's got some chains in there. Because of course she does.
You think that's what happened?
Ah, she knocks off the dolls, knowing that that's Drusilla's trunk, is just like, yep, Drusilla's the kind of girl that would have chains.
Yeah, I guess so. And see, I thought she just like knew where they were. And I'm like, Buffy, how'd you know where they were? But yeah.
No, she puzzled it out. She thought about it. She was just like, okay, Drusilla lived here. There's definitely chains somewhere. Let me find her room.
She chains Angel up, and then she noticed the scorch marks on the floor where Angel came back, and I guess comes to the correct conclusion that that's where Angel came back at.
Mm-hmm.
Although she never really talks about how he came back after, and that's exactly where she put the ring.
Yeah.
And it never had, like, Buffy, Giles, Angel, nobody ever makes the connection that he came back right where she left the ring. And that she might have something to do with it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's the first thing I would think after wondering why I'm in a story with vampires. But like the first thing I would think would be, this has something to do with me. The ring brought him back, you know? And Buffy never, ever makes that connection. And neither does anyone else.
Yeah.
I will be fair to say, we don't know that anyone else knows that she put the ring there.
It is said by Giles once that, you know, coincidences are possible, but like, yeah, what if there is something about that act of love or whatnot that helped open the door? Who knows? Because I certainly don't. I don't know. They never explained it in the show properly, and it may be in the comics somewhere, but I haven't gotten that deep into the Angel comics myself, so who knows?
I just think it's funny, no matter how many times they talk about it on Angel and on Buffy, it never comes up that he came back, not just he came back because Buffy put the ring there.
And I can't remember, is the Clawder ring like ever a thing again for Buffy after this, or is it just gone?
It's just gone.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
Right, but if I was there, right at this, chained Angel up, and then looked at the scorch marks that sent my boyfriend back from hell, I would be like, oh, those scorch marks surround the spot where I put the ring he gave me, and it's gone now.
Is it like an exchange thing in order to get your dead boyfriend back from the hell dimension? You have to give a piece of jewelry, and it just flips.
I wonder if that's just like a crossroads type place, and if she was to put another ring there, somebody else would come back.
Oh yeah, it has to be tied like a gift. Like if she went and like found the broken bracelet that Xander gave her after Xander dies one day, would Xander come back? Maybe that's a thing.
Yeah.
Any dead guy that gave her jewelry, that's the summoning spot.
Yeah, I think I might be mixing lore from Supernatural and from the powers that be in Angel in that little scenario. But
you know, people have been begging for a crossover.
I personally think that would be the most awesome thing ever that has ever happened.
All right, back to the episode. Cut to the library.
Right.
All right, the episode we're discussing. Faith's rocking out to some Teenage Hate Machine by Mark Ferrari. That's how that's Ferrari.
And I will point out, not paying attention to Oz.
No.
At all.
No.
He could have completely broken out again with her, and she wouldn't even have noticed.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying.
What we've determined out of all of the possible people to watch Oz, pretty much Giles and Willow are the only ones who can actually be counted on.
Pretty much.
Buffy comes in and Faith hits her because she is totally unaware of her surroundings.
Like all good slayers.
Yeah. And basically Buffy's just like, I couldn't sleep, figured I'd cram for my French test, and Faith's out of there. No further explanation needed.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to go kill a few vampires before the morning.
Yeah.
So then Buffy goes to get card file out of the library. It's very 90s. Brought back memories. And she starts looking through it to find some books. And we cut to the next morning when Giles enters the library and goes up and unlocks the cage for Oz, and then goes and finds Buffy asleep.
Yes.
And she's surrounded by books on stuff like reincarnation and alternate dimensions and a Cathla. One thing to note here is that Giles does not get mad at Buffy for being asleep.
Right. Well, Oz didn't get out, so why would you be mad?
We don't know that Oz got out. Because if he got out the night before, he came back.
Yeah, that's true.
So he
was definitely in that cage.
Yeah, so it's kind of a double standard here.
Yeah.
Not that Xander did mess up, but
yeah,
he's not mad at Buffy for doing the exact same thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was noted by me as well. And it's funny because I was like, well, at least it looks like Buffy didn't mean to fall asleep. She was kind of sitting up. But apparently, original script, that's what Xander was too.
Yeah. But maybe that's why they changed it.
Maybe. Even though, Giles doesn't know how Xander fell asleep.
So Giles wakes Buffy up and mentions something about, can you believe Faith in these nutty books? Which is absolute ridiculous thing to say, considering one of the books is literally on Buffy's lap. I don't know how she thought that would do anything at all, but Giles doesn't buy it, and they start talking about why she's reading the books, and she gives Giles a hypothetical about Angel coming back and says that she dreamed it.
Mm-hmm.
Giles is like, yeah, there's no record of that. I don't know why it would happen. And Buffy's like, well, maybe it did. What would he be like? And Giles says he would be feral, which is basically what Angel is.
Mm-hmm. Feral man who puts on pants.
Yeah. And that he would be a monster and a lost cause and probably not be able to be redeemed. Anyway, it's a very depressing conversation for Buffy. And then Willow enters.
Now, wait.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. What?
Wait.
What am I missing?
There's this conversation that Buffy says that, he would be a lost cause, and Giles says that there are two types of monsters.
The first can be redeemed, or more importantly, wants to be redeemed.
And the second type?
Second is void of humanity. cannot respond to reason or love.
Yes.
So that's an important bit to lay out the two different types of monsters that we see in both Angel and Pete. This is such an important conversation about this specific episode, about Angel being the one that wants to be redeemed, and Pete, that is, the one who's void of all humanity. But the entire time Giles was giving this speech, I was just thinking Spike versus Warren.
Oh my God.
Two types of monsters.
Yes.
Got it. You're either a Spike or you're a Warren. Nailed it. Good. Okay, moving on.
So, when it comes to fictional characters, probably a certain person on Game of Thrones and Warren are the two I despise more than any other fictional character. Just Warren is just, no. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
We'll get there.
Okay, yes, they talk about the two types of monsters, and then Willow walks in.
With donuts.
With donuts. And starts talking about how they have a spritzy thing that plops the batter, and Buffy's like, you couldn't sleep. And Willow says, I've been sitting in Mr. Donut since the TV did that snowy thing. And I'm like, wait, like, she has parents. Like, when I was a teenager, that would have never happened, that I was out all night. I would have been terrified to do that. They all do it like it's absolutely nothing. Anyway, I notice it more that now that I'm a parent, that why are all these kids out running around all willy-nilly all night with vampires and stuff? Go home and go to bed. Sorry. I'm an old and boring mom now. And they start talking about what happened with the body. Yeah, they start talking about what happened with the body. And I don't know why Buffy doesn't tell them about Angel at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it never really explains why she doesn't tell them, except for one little thing when she's talking to Mr. Platt later, and she's like, I can't tell them because I don't know what they do. And it's kind of like, I mean, what would they do? Y'all would all try to figure it out together like you do everything else. Why are you scared to tell them? I feel like this is a huge mistake Buffy makes when she doesn't tell them.
Yeah. And it is something that comes to a head a little bit later on in the season. I think that there is sometimes like a shock response that Buffy has, where she just would rather not talk about it than confront certain issues, or she wants to figure it out on her own. It's that Slayer isolation stuff again, where she'd rather just piece it together herself and know everything before she confronts anybody else about it or brings anybody else in case there's information that she gains that would change people's reactions, that kind of thing. I could see that, because I think that's a pattern that we've seen repeated at least a couple of times from her. What's interesting here is that Willow's here talking about how it was inconclusive with the body and kind of keeps distracting everybody with the donuts and stuff like that, obviously not wanting to talk about how, Oz may have killed someone. And Buffy is full-on Angel alert mode, right? And doesn't piece together that what she fears, because she's asking, was it a vampire? Was it this? Was it that? Is exactly what Willow is fearing, that the person she loves is the one doing this. So she's very priority shift kind of reaction going on here.
Yeah. And in the episode, Buffy keeps interrupting her, and Giles says, let her finish, Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
And Buffy's like, it's just, I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene ends. And so she doesn't finish.
Yeah.
But in the script book, there's more to that scene. And Willow glances at Oz and says, I should know more after tonight. I'm doing hair and fiber tests. And Oz says, you know how to do those? And Willow says, no, I like to sound technical when I'm scared, but I figure hair found on the body, see if they match. It's a test. And Oz says, so we're scared now. It's official. And Willow's like, what? No, I didn't mean it that way. And Oz says, no, I'd say scared is pretty much called for. It's cool. And then for some reason, Buffy goes off on her own to have lunch.
To have various flavors of Jell-O.
Which is her version of lunch today.
We've all had those days.
Yes. So she's wandering the cafeteria by herself, which, Like, why didn't she stay with her friends, or they go to the cafeteria with her? Or like, it doesn't make sense. But Buffy is now in the cafeteria by herself holding a tray full of Jell-O. And she sees Scott and Debbie and Pete sitting at a table, and Scott waves her over. And she sits down, and Scott continues being cute by saying, I can't back you on this lunch, nutritional demerits. And then they kind of discuss the food, and they start talking about Mr. Platt again. And Buffy's like, well, I kind of thought he was okay. And Debbie's like, oh, well, I guess he can be. Scott gives her a compliment, and then she's like, oh, I have to go. I can't stay here. I have to go. And leaves, which is weird.
I wrote at the end of this scene, I kind of feel like Scott made the right choice in not staying in a relationship with Buffy.
Well, yeah, definitely. Because, no. And then Pete has the comment, check out Scott liking the manic depressive chick. Then there's a little scene cut out where Scott glares at Pete, and Pete says, I'm just kidding, my friend. She's special. Like 2 very hot girlfriends in one. And that was taken out. And now Buffy's back at the mansion and is kind of trying to see if there's anything of Angel in this feral creature that wears pants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Feral pants creature.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, Angel, do you understand me? Inching ever so close and reaches out to touch him on his shoulder, and he's not into it. He lashes out, and Buffy runs from the mansion, and he's just kind of there whimpering and pulling on his chains, and we see some signs that bracket that he's chained to, which doesn't look very secure to begin with, but might not hold him for long.
Yeah.
Maybe not the best thing she could have secured him to, but okay. Okay, so then we go to Pete and Debbie, who are in one of the halls, and Pete's there kind of encouraging Debbie to go and do naughty things. And so they go into this like utility supply room and start making out, and Debbie's kind of trying to distract him and pulling him away from this empty jar that contains some kind of like glowing ooze.
Hulk.
Yeah,
Hulk liquid.
That green Hulk goo. And she fails miserably. He sees it because it turns out it's glowing and whatnot, and it's just sitting there.
And it's his, and he knows it's there, so,
He confronts her about it and asks if she drank it, and she's just like, no, and he gets super upset, and she gets real nervous and all that. But here's my like, my brain's trying to like comprehend this. So here's her plan, right? She goes in, she sneaks into this room at some point, and like dumps this liquid, I guess, and then just leaves the empty jar there.
With a tiny bit in the bottom.
And like,
it just really makes sense.
Yeah, like, doesn't he even say something along the lines of trying to look? He's like, what is that, right? He's trying to like figure out why that's there. It's like she purposefully like left it somewhere where he would see it. It's a really odd scene that makes no sense to me. And I actually I've started reading the transcripts before I watch the episode because I feel like it helps me watch the episodes without having to pause as much, taking notes and everything. So I read the transcript for this scene, and reading the transcript for this scene made no sense to me.
Yeah. There is like a little description, which I don't think we see when it comes back to them in the shed in another scene, like after another scene. And it says that on a table at the back, there's all kinds of chemistry stuff and more jars of liquid and things like that.
Yeah. So from there, we cut to Mr. Platt's office, and Buffy enters and very panically kind of rushes through that there's something going on, and there's nobody else that she could talk to, and she found out, if they found out, they'd freak. Which is kind of like maybe the little bit of reasoning that they put in that she's not telling anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. I will point out that during this scene, Sarah Michelle Gellar does an amazing job of looking just desperate. and hopeless and terrified. It is really, really good.
Yeah. And then she notices that while he is in the exact same pose that he was in the first time she came to his office, now his cigarette is completely burnt to ash. And it pans over as she says that she's so scared it's this guy, he's come back, and reveals that Mr. Platt is Mr. Dead.
Yeah. I'm really curious how far Buffy would have went in telling him. Because when she first comes in there, she makes the comment that you're probably going to think that I need mental help, or what exactly does she say?
Mm-hmm. She's loony.
Oh, this probably convinced you that I'm loony bin.
Yeah.
But I can't tell anyone else. And I wonder if she would have actually started telling him.
Yeah. She acts like she's like, this is his whole story. Like, I'm going to tell you the entire thing. Which doesn't make sense, but okay. that she would have been that open with this guy that she's met once.
Right.
But honestly, I mean, if there's someone who's bottled up to the point that they're just gonna, like, rattle off way too much information in any kind of therapy scenario, it's Buffy. That girl needs therapy bad.
Okay, so then we're back in the garden shed, and Pete is still yelling and berating Debbie about the bottle or the jar of liquid. And Debbie is like, I was just trying to get rid of it. And he's kind of condescending and mocking. And she claims she wanted to help him so he wouldn't get the way he gets. And he basically turns into classic abusive guy. It's your fault. You're the reason I get this way. You can't do anything about it. And like throws her around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Then he tells her that she's the reason he did it in the first place, so he could be the man she wanted, and then accuses her of whoring around with other guys, and makes fun of her seeing a shrink, and basically says, well, he's gone now, and I'm all you got. And then he kind of sees what he's done and sees her, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, but, if you didn't make me mad, it wouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So classic abuser.
Yeah.
And then he gets upset and she starts comforting him, saying, oh, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things layered in here as far as that it's weird to say stereotypical abusive relationship, because I hate the idea that we stereotype abusive relationships. But
and I agree, but it's so much the stereotypical abusive relationship that every TV show and
it's so
movie and stuff does that. It's cliche.
Yeah, it's so formulaic. It is.
Yes.
It is
there
so
you go.
by the book. Like, it's like, hey, this is the story we're telling, and we're going to make sure that you understand it exactly by not being subtle in any way, shape, or form. Which there are things that you don't really need to have subtlety to, and, to be very blunt about an abusive relationship and to talk about how it's bad is something that I have no problem with them just putting out there. But there's just something about, one, we're not invested in these characters. Two, they do that thing again where they, like, kind of make it a, like, mystical Hellmouth thing, but then kind of make it, no, he's just an abusive guy, which, kind of make it magical Sunnydale land and kind of make it just real world stuff. But I will say, like, of the performances here, at first, like, pretty much every time I've watched this, I've never really cared for Debbie's performance. But I think that there were some very conscious things, and I think there's some interesting subtlety to Debbie's performance that does well. And I need to look up, let me see here. Okay, Danielle Weeks. Danielle Weeks plays Debbie. I think there's some subtlety to Danielle Weeks' performance, and I really do like her little moment at the end where she's just kind of like stroking him and saying, it's okay, it's okay. I think that's a really solid note. But, like, earlier in the episode, she's very, like she's just like a ditzy girl almost, is kind of the way that it feels when I'm watching her. And especially like the way that she complains about Mr. Platt just felt off to me. But now I'm watching this thinking that Debbie actually likes Mr. Platt, the same way that Buffy likes Mr. Platt. Whether or not we as the audience like or dislike Mr. Platt is irrelevant. Debbie likes Mr. Platt and was trying to make it seem like she didn't, so Pete wouldn't go after him.
Yeah, and she actually says, what she says about, he says things that I don't like. So I'm wondering if maybe Mr. Platt has said negative things about the abusive presence in Debbie's life.
It could be.
And she don't want to hear it.
Yeah. I like to read it because I like to read, this is my female empowerment show. I want to read about strong women. I like to read it as there's a part of her that knows that if she talks about how she does like Mr. Platt, like she does enjoy like him as a person and thinks that, he offers her something, advice-wise, therapeutic-wise. But if she says that, she knows that Pete will view him as some sort of threat because it is attention that she is giving him that she's not giving Pete. What is interesting is that there's in this room that they're in, and I don't know if you can see it now, but you can definitely see it at the end of the episode. There's like a spray painted thing on the wall that says, Debbie loves Johnny. So Debbie is a girl that, because he talks about her whoring around, right? Debbie is a girl that apparently enjoyed, having several men in her life, or, kind of just like, one of those that had other people in her life than Pete. And so, like, what's the backstory, right? Like, what's the situation? How did Debbie and Pete get into this situation to where
he got the impression that he had to do that to be what she wanted?
Yeah. But, like, how did Debbie get to this point where it's one thing to have her be like, I can't get out of this relationship because obviously he's,
a mutant.
A mutant thing that will kill everybody who I look at. But, like, she is in such denial of what's going on with Pete and is talking about, like, how it's because he loves her so much and, like, just, like, how much gaslighting has occurred and how long has this been going on to get her conditioned in this way? Because she is super conditioned. And Pete does not seem like someone who, like, he had to take, like, juiced up stuff to, like, get Debbie's attention was basically the premise, right? That's how he got her in the first place. So then if he was already, like, aggressive guy, like, how long has he been taking this stuff? The timeline doesn't make sense to me. Like, the backstory that's presented is that Debbie was a girl that enjoyed having multiple suitors, who wasn't really one that wanted to be pinned down, basically. Didn't want to be in a relationship kind of girl. And apparently someone who liked very strong, aggressive, bestial men, right? That was the type of guy that she was after. According to what we're told in the text of this episode. And then we have Pete here who cooks up this juice so that he can start getting Debbie's attention. So this is when one would assume that Debbie starts to be in a position where gaslighting could possibly happen.
Yeah.
But then, like, how do we get to the point where Debbie's so convinced of this gaslighting that she's willing to just throw herself away in this an abusive relationship?
I see exactly what you're saying, but that is not how I interpreted it at all. I interpret it because near the end, Scott makes a comment about how I've been friends with both of them since before we started school. Mm-hmm. And I immediately get this impression of a little trio of friends who have been friends their entire lives. And then two of them started dating and possibly started dating like in middle school.
Yeah.
I got the impression that they had been together for years, like Debbie and Pete as a couple. And Pete somehow got insecure and started doing this thing on his own because he believed he had to so Debbie would like him. Mm-hmm. Like, the jealousy and not wanting to see her talk to or interact with any other male. I think that was like part of his personality anyway.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of did this on his own.
Yeah. And it could
and became, that's how I saw it. Not as in they had just started dating, you know.
And it could be that the Debbie loves Johnny was supposed to be more like a friendship thing, right? Like it's just like, ha ha ha, yeah. But like that's the decision that was made somewhere by somebody that reinforces the idea that there are other guys in Debbie's life.
Or they could have broke up for a little while and then got back together. I don't know. I kind of got the impression they'd been together a long time. Oh, like a really long time. But they never tell us.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know. I just feel like the level at which she's at, like where she is like a middle-aged woman who's been in this marriage for years and has kids and feels trapped. Like, I mean, I feel like that's where, and she's a high schooler.
Well, that's kind of why I get the impression that they've been together for a really long time.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like she should be at this point, and it doesn't feel like she should be at this point with the other things going on, like the Hulk ooze. It's a very
there's lots of questions.
Sloppy storyline that kind of becomes a dominant storyline here. And I say a dominant storyline because I think structurally this episode's very confusing to me, because normally you have like your A plot and then maybe your B plot and then there's like some trickly points that might be a C plot in there somewhere. But this has essentially 3 plot lines going on, right? You got the Debbie and Pete stuff, you got the Oz stuff, and you've got the Angel stuff, right? And like, they're all kind of equal footing in a lot of ways. There's not a plot line that seems like it's the dominant plot line.
Yeah, and they're kind of equal footing, although it seems to me like the Debbie and Pete one doesn't really like pick up steam until near the end. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden that's all it is Debbie and Pete.
It's
all
Debbie
of a sudden, oh, this is it. And you're like, wait, what happened to everything else?
Yeah.
You know? So because you got this little story going on with Debbie and Pete, and then all of a sudden he's the bad guy, and you're like, oh wait, where did that come from? You know?
Yeah, and this is where I feel like this episode falls apart for me. It's like the Debbie and Pete storyline is presented just to tell this specific story, to have this formulaic abusive relationship.
Oh yeah, we never saw them.
Yeah, it's not
before.
There's no investment in these characters because they just show up. There's not really, even with Scott, who has been best friends with them for all of his life. You know, I've known them forever. It's kind of just like, well, you win some, you lose some in the end.
Yeah.
He's not really torn up. Like, I mean, he's sad, sure, but more like ho-hum sad than like devastated.
My 2 best friends in the world that I've been friends with since basically preschool die horrifically. I'm probably not going to be at school the next day.
Probably going to stay home that day. So
like, at least a day.
Yeah. So there's just so much that's just disjointed. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, how does she get to this point? And it's thinking about it timeline wise and trying to figure out, when does the ooze come in and when does he start to lose control to this level? And like, how does this all work? It's just real, like, it breaks my brain. And ultimately, I feel like you could cut out a lot of this Debbie Pete storyline and tell a similar story that focuses more just on Oz and Angel and have a much tighter episode. But I think there's just too much in this episode. Like, they just tried to stuff it too full with too many storylines that no storyline gets developed to the point where you feel like it's complete, yeah. It's just
Okay. So, after that, we go back to the library. Where Giles is talking about the creature that killed Mr. Platt is especially brutal, and Mr. Platt was pureed, which we really didn't see.
Yeah.
And Faith figures out, it's like, hey, but it just happened. So, the guy was killed during the day, and Willow jumps up and punches a fist in the air and goes, yay! And then everybody looks at her, and she kind of explains well, it's horrible, but, and Buffy's like, yeah, we're all glad Oz is off the hook. And I think at this point, Buffy should be kind of happy too, because she would realize Angel is also off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Because Angel can't kill during the day either.
Yeah.
And then Giles is like, yeah, we're happy about it, but where is he? Because the sun sets soon. And then we see Oz by the fountain, and he's kind of waiting. And then you see he starts to leave. He's like, okay, I got to go. And then he sees Debbie, who came to get the notes, and Oz sees her bruises and black eye, and is like, you okay? And she says she fell down and hit a doorknob. And he tells her if she ever needs to talk, she can. And then Pete shows up and watches them from afar. And he sees Debbie. This doesn't happen in the episode, but in the script book, Debbie puts her hand on Oz's hand because she is touched by his concern. And that is what Pete sees. In the episode, Pete just sees them talking.
Yeah.
Then she runs off, and Oz thinks about going after her, but it's too close to sunset, so he goes toward the library. So then we're back in the library, and Giles is talking about, how we determine what sort of killer we have, and Oz enters, and they let him know, hey, it's not you, it's a kill in the day monster. At which point Oz says, okay. In the episode, in the script book, it's supposed to say he's filled with relief, and Willow and Oz hug. Giles is like, hey, I wish we could celebrate. We still got to figure this out. What do these two victims have in common? And Oz realizes that they had Debbie in common. Mm-hmm. That the first victim was in jazz band with her. And then there's this really funny exchange.
Well, victim number 1, Jeff. He was in jazz band with us. They used to horse around.
They were screwing?
I don't think so, but he hid her music comp book once.
And it's just the timing and the way they all say it is just hilarious. And Buffy's like, yeah, and we know that Debbie knew Mr. Platt, and she talked a lot about not liking him. Then Oz points out that he just ran into her, and she has a black eye. And they kind of talk about it for a little bit longer and figure out that boyfriend Pete's the one doing this. And Giles is like, we have to find him. They all split up. Faith and Giles go together, and Willow and Buffy go together. And Oz says, I'll lock myself in the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know where Xander and Cordelia are during this. Like, Cordelia kind of makes sense not being there, but where is Xander?
Yeah.
Like, does he have other friends he's with?
Well, maybe they're on a date. They are dating.
Yeah, possibly. During the school day, though?
Yeah, they're on a date. Well, it's not the school day. It's like 5:30 at night because it's sunset.
Oh, yeah, good point. It throws me off because they're all still at school.
They're always still at school. So they talk about Debbie getting this black eye in a conflict with Mr. Platt, and Buffy's like, no, Platt was dead in an instant. When? How does Pete kill him so swiftly and so, to where not even the ash from his cigarette falls, he doesn't even drop his smoke, killed in an instant, and then continues to puree him, and still he is seated upright in a very clean-looking environment where it takes Buffy noticing that his cigarette is burnt out to decipher that something has gone afoot here.
Yeah, and with her Slayer senses doesn't smell blood or anything.
But beyond that, yes, he was killed in an instant. So we could have that scene earlier where it was a repeated pattern and Buffy could have her confession bit.
Really? Yeah.
Yep.
But
very, very true.
I'll have more on that later. Cut to the girls' locker room, and Debbie is trying to hide her black eye and
makeup.
Yeah, Buffy is saying that what works best is not getting hit, and asks what's going on. Yes, and this is again like showing more gaslighting. She's like, it's not his fault. I make him crazy. Very much like repeated lines that Pete has fed her.
Buffy mentions that Pete's not like other guys, and Debbie's like, I gotta go. There's a line here I really, really like when Buffy says, you have to talk to us. We can't help you until you do. And Debbie says, I didn't ask for your help. And Willow replies, well, when are you going to? I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, yeah, but when are you going to ask for help? Like, I love that line from Willow. It's, yeah. And then Buffy tells Debbie, we're running out of time. You got to help us. And then we move to Angel, and we see him break his chain off the wall.
He's free! Free, Feral Pants Boy.
Yes. And then he takes off.
I think he has shoes on at some point, too. Like, he starts off in pants and socks, I'm pretty sure, and then at some point puts on shoes.
Well, he's got a wardrobe there in the mansion. He's not there to protect his feet. Then we're back in the locker room with Debbie and Buffy and Willow, and Debbie still won't help them find Pete, and she claims he's going to change. And Debbie's like, well, would they take him somewhere if I told you? And Buffy's like, probably. And then Debbie is like panicking. I can't be away from Pete, which is another kind of, they've been together for a really long time thing. That kind of makes me think that. And Willow's like, yeah, of course you can. Believe me, we'll help you because we understand. And then you can see Debbie kind of resolve. She's like, no, I'm his everything. I'd never do that to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like... So there's a couple of lines from Buffy that's like, why are you protecting him? Anybody who really loved you couldn't do this to you. Things like, are you just going to live out this grim fairy tale and all of this stuff? I feel like there's obviously intent to show some parallels between Debbie and Pete and Buffy and Angel, but I just struggle with it. I just struggle to get there.
Yeah, no, they're not anywhere like each other.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't, there could have been a way that you could have done this and had these parallels and had more of an A-plot that involves Pete, Debbie, Angel, Buffy, all as like a central through line idea, but they didn't do that. It really feels like two separate storylines that occasionally they're just like, but oh, you're keeping Angel from everybody and he's a violent animal. You're protecting Angel, right? But it's still like, there's not enough connecting tissue for me to be like, that's what they were going for. It's just like every now and again, they're just like hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Without actually taking time to develop it properly. And, we've seen this, recently in Anne, where there was another kind of pseudo Buffy Angel relationship in, what were their names? It's like
Anne and Ricky?
Ricky.
Not Anne.
Yeah. It was Ricky and Lily? Was it
Lily?
Lily.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, Ricky and Lily. Yeah, those two, who are almost as forgettable as Scott Hope. But like they never really do what I think the writers think they're doing, or they never do enough with them to make me feel like it's worthwhile making these comparisons. But it's obviously there, like it's just there. Buffy's saying these words specifically because the writers are just like, oh yeah, this also applies to Angel, doesn't it? Ha 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 ha! Look how clever we are. I just, I appreciate the writing of this show so much, but I will rip it apart when I see stuff like this, and I'm just like, okay, actually take the time to make these through lines connected, and don't just throw in a line of dialogue to say, see, it's all related. It's all the same thing, because it's not. Oh, and develop your story in a way that makes sense that this high school girl is so destroyed by this guy that she's acting like this. Make it make sense to me, please. All right, Oz is alone in his cage.
Because apparently now no one needs
to watch Oz anymore.
They all just leave.
They've decided that, he's been proven innocent, so there's no more danger of this werewolf.
Except there was somebody with him to watch him before.
Every other time, yeah.
Yeah.
But Pete's there. Pete's gonna come visit. Pete's a good guy. And it's just no chill at all. Talking about, since when do you touch my girl? And Oz is kind of trying to be like, maybe now's not the time. And, say, like, you probably don't want to, like, let me out, because when the sun sets, there's gonna be some stuff going on. And Pete's just like, you won't be alive to see it. And then, like, Oz is still kind of chill. He's just like, yeah, but, you know, something's gonna happen. And then Pete turns into Monster Pete.
Yeah.
And I was like,
In the midst of Oz telling him something's about to happen that you probably won't understand. And he turns into Monster Pete. And Oz is like, or maybe he will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So, Pete rips the cage door open and throws Oz out. And we'll get back to that. And
Which I'm assuming that Oz would not be killed in an instant.
yeah, like...
And he's not even trying to kill in an instant.
We'll get back to that. I have lots of sarcastic notes coming up. Don't worry about it. I've made plans. So Debbie is back at the locker room. Debbie is sitting, just hugging herself, saying, he does love me, he does love me, he does love me, on repeat. Buffy kind of gives up and says they just have to find Pete. And as they try to leave with Debbie, Willow says, I think we broke her, because she just continues to sit there. And Buffy says, I think she was broken before this. And I just wrote, this is so messed up. Like, this is a dark, terrible, terrible storyline. Let's go.
Yeah. We're back at Pete and Oz, and Pete is like, did you kiss that whore? Did she like it?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's literally so cliched that it's almost
like it's
ridiculous.
It's such a serious topic, and I just watch it roll my eyes because I'm just like, ugh, this bit.
And I feel like I shouldn't.
Yeah, like it feels bad because
Like,
obviously, like
I feel guilty about it,
Yeah.
but it's so ridiculous. It's like they take every single trope or stereotype about an abusive relationship and what it is, and they cram them all into these scenes in the like 10 minutes of this episode.
yes, and I'll tell
And
you,
they're just one after another, you know?
all right, we're ready. Sarcastic comment time.
Okay.
So Pete, the very Pete who killed Platt in an instant, now feels like he should pull his punches a bit and take time to taunt Oz. He continues to throw Oz around in very aggressive yet not very harmful ways, and even allows Oz to get a kick in before the sunset, and Oz stands in his mighty I'm about to turn into a vicious killer pose and says, time's up, rules change.
Which I very much enjoy Oz doing that.
But like, man, Pete got nerfed real hard in this episode. Killed Platt in an instant. Didn't even drop his cigarette. He was so dead. And Oz is just like flung around and just gets up. He's fine.
Yeah, but we do have to consider the different reasons these characters were killed. So Jeff at the beginning was killed because Pete thought that Debbie was flirting with him and he was coming on to her.
Mm-hmm.
So he took his time and kind of like mauled him and stuff. But then Mr. Platt was not killed because, I mean, it was all jealousy, but it wasn't the same kind of jealousy because he wasn't killed because Pete thought that he was coming on to Debbie. He was killed because he was somebody that Debbie could talk to other than Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe he didn't feel the need to taunt Mr. Platt and to be like, how could you with my girl or whatever. He just killed him to get him out of the way so Debbie has no one else to talk to.
Yeah, except that he was pureed. That's the part that it falls apart for me.
I'm not trying to make it all stick together. I'm just kind of going.
You're just giving the little bit of nuggets that might help explain it. The little bit of reasoning
about why he might be acting different in these two murders. I'm not trying to make it make sense.
Yeah, the problem is that, you know, for every reason that you could give to make this story make a little bit more sense, I feel like there's a counter reason that you could find that makes that reason not make sense.
But I was discussing character motive, not how they messed this up with their dialogue.
Not actual, like, what happened to the victims. Because what happened to the victims and character motive does not always match up here.
Yeah. So then we have them fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry. now the two monsters go at it. It's a full-on when animals attack extravaganza.
So that's the description in the script.
Yes.
This is my description.
Uh-huh.
Oz morphs into the big bad wolf. He leaps on Pete, and they flop around on the floor for a bit, and Oz gets a delectable chunk of Pete's arm, who screams alert messages all out to the Scoobies. Sans, Cordy, and Xander, who I can only assume are enjoying a lovely evening out.
I think the description in the script book is more colorful.
Oh. I like flop around on the floor for a bit. Honestly, I feel like that's what they did.
I'm gonna vote for when animals attack extravaganza.
All right. I feel like we need to have a poll.
Yeah.
Giles and Buffy and all of the others are alerted, and so they run into the library, and Giles is just like, get the dart gun, and Buffy's grabs it and takes aim, and Debbie shoves her, causing the dart to go off target and hit Giles instead.
Oh, sorry.
All right, bloody priceless.
And he is out for the rest of the episode.
Yep. Bye, Giles.
Yeah. Buffy shoves Debbie away and then starts fighting with Pete. Both monsters split up. Pete apparently is no longer obsessed with killing Oz. He's going to go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So he goes one way, Oz goes the other way. And Buffy's going to take Pete, and Faith is going to go get Oz. And Willow follows Faith, obviously, because she's going after Oz. And then we have a scene that was cut out where we have Debbie entering the little room that's their room where they make out and calling uncertainly, Pete. And then we have Debbie move into a dark corner to sit and wait.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is indeed messed up.
Yeah. So she's sitting there waiting for Pete to come back to her.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we have Buffy chasing Pete through the school, and he goes out a window, and Buffy eventually discovers that from the blood trail and follows him.
Mm-hmm.
Then we see Faith racing after Oz and Willow behind her running. And then we go back to the garden shed.
Pete comes in, and Debbie's very glad to see him. She runs up and throws her arms around him and hugs him close. And he doesn't hug her back, which I think is interesting because we see a similar hug in the way that Angel embraces Buffy at the end of the episode, where Angel full on hugs Buffy and Buffy just doesn't hug back. But it's obviously very different circumstances, but it's another little parallel there. But she goes on to say I protected you. I stopped Buffy from shooting you, and you have to leave because she knows about what's going on. And Pete is not even remotely caring boyfriend in this scene. Does not have any loving nature to him at all. Is just straight up accusing Debbie of telling Buffy everything and that she is a waste of space. And yeah, we cut away as we hear Debbie scream no. And man, this is the weird thing. I don't know. I would be remiss to not talk about the fact that this is a show that paints real life things with a supernatural brush, right? That's the way it does, And even in this episode earlier in the counseling session, you have him talking about Angel like he's a typical, he just acted nice until he got what he wanted from you and then became bad, which is painted. It's a scenario, again, kind of a formulaic scenario, but a scenario that exists a lot in television, especially in our media, that got painted with that Buffy supernatural brush where he was a vampire with a soul and he lost his soul because of some curse loophole and all of this. In this episode, they really frame it like it's the juice, right? It's a Hulk goo that's making him crazier and crazier and crazier, and like it's in his system and he can't get rid of it, and it's a point that it goes too far. But then at the end of the episode they're like, but no, it was just him, he was just a monster. So like with that in mind, how the episode is presented is that this is a scene of just an angry teenage boy murdering his girlfriend. And that's what this scene is. Might have been nice to have a little bit more time taking on those characters, because this is some dark stuff.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so what's not dark though is Werewolf Oz. He's just a bounty boy. He's so happy and bouncy and jumping around, living his best wolf life. He doesn't even really care about like all them tasty niblets back in the library. He just wanted to like run and be free and bounce around. He's just doing great. But Faith shows up and has a gun and starts to go for him, but he's too quick and he jumps on her, causing her to drop the gun. And yeah, that's just a little quick cut. What I'm saying is just like Werewolf Oz is pretty chill. He just wanted to run around the school halls and have a good time, and Faith had to ruin it for him.
Yeah. And then we're back to the garden shed, and Buffy enters and finds Debbie's body. And she goes to take her pulse and nothing.
Pete sneaks up behind her, grabs her, and throws her into the wall. And then we're back in the school hallway where Faith and Oz are battling on the floor. Faith is managing to hold him off and then yells at Willow to get the gun. So Willow sees that Faith can't get to it and runs up and pulls Oz's tail to get his attention and takes off running so Oz will chase her. At which point Faith scrambles for the gun and shoots Oz dead on. And he then instantly falls to the floor in like half a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that tranquilizers work that fast. I find that strange. It's like almost at the same time.
Here's the thing. Like, not only is that strange because it instantly took this werewolf out, which seems unlikely, but it didn't instantly take Giles out.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Oh my goodness.
So,
yeah.
Canon in show, Giles has more constitution than a werewolf.
Nice. I believe it.
Believe it. It's facts. Believe it. All right. So, back to Buffy and Pete. And Pete is down to the point where he's just like, all women are evil and you're all the same and I'm going to kill you all, basically.
Which is also, yeah.
Yeah. Seems like there might be some magical goo still working its stuff. It seems like there might be some monster mystical stuff in here still, because he's super ramped up. It's escalating quickly. It's yeah.
Yeah, well, because like earlier when he saw Debbie crying, like it was enough to snap him out of it.
Yeah. And now he's gotten...
so he could start then gaslighting her about how she caused it.
Mm-hmm.
But now seeing her dead...
He's got no remorse.
At his own hand.
Nothing. He's
fine.
just like, I'm just going to kill another one. That's the way I am now. So he continues to hit Buffy, and she falls to the ground, and behind her, the door opens, and she looks back to see Angel, Mr. Pharaoh Pants himself. And he and Pete have a very vicious, animalistic battle. Just, really hitting home those bestial instincts that they both have. And it ends with Angel wrapping a chain around Pete's neck and snapping it.
Yeah.
And Pete goes back to his normal state, which is a choice. I guess that makes it easier to explain. As far as a police force later. So I guess that's the one thing there. But he goes back to his human form. So it's like a weird visual where even though he was a monster, he changes back to the human face after we just witnessed Angel kill him. So there's that lovely note to end on. And Angel, stares at Buffy and slowly approaches and then also changes into his human face. So I guess the imagery that they're going for is the only way for Pete to regain his humanity was to be killed, and Angel had enough of that desire to be redeemed still in him, going off of what Giles said earlier, to be able to change back into his human form on his own. So there you go, lovely Lovely through line there. See, there's little things that connect. I just wish they did more with it.
Yeah. Well, then Angel says Buffy, and they look at each other. And I'm going to read the little thing that it has in the script book. It's Buffy nods, and with her affirmation, Angel falls to his knees at her feet. Despite the chains and shackles, he wraps his arms around her waist and begins to cry as he feels the first comfort he's known in 100 years.
I just wrote Sarah acts her ass off.
She does, very much. But those weren't my words. Those are words in the script. Yeah.
And then the camera cuts to a wide shot. Look at all of this going on. You got a dead Pete, you got a dead Debbie, and you got Angel hugging Buffy.
Yeah, I have some stuff to say in just a minute.
Okay.
Well, they're talking about what happened with Pete and all the different theories. That one is that Pete had 8 iced cafe mochas and lost it. And there's another one that is he took all his mother's birth control pills.
Yeah.
And lost it. And Cordelia's like, he didn't? He was a monster? And says, where have I been? At which Xander replies, in your special place, Core, and that's why I adore you. And I'm like, well, where were you, Xander?
I was like,
you weren't there either.
I wrote that exact same thing in my notes.
And then Willow says that we found Pete's lab diaries and stuff, which I guess go into Willow's collection of things.
Mm-hmm.
Which
she's got a closet.
Wild.
She's got a closet where she keeps like Ted parts, Pete's lab books, and a cauldron.
Yeah.
That's Willow's special closet.
And they basically explained that he was doing a Jekyll Hyde thing. And then Buffy sees Scott and goes off toward him to talk. And here's my thing. Not only, like, why are you at school?
Yeah.
But also, what do you think happened?
Yeah.
Like, what does Scott think happened? Because he doesn't know the real story.
Yeah.
But, like, okay, people know that that Pete went crazy. Because they're talking about theories about why. And so we can conceivably believe that he killed Mr. Platt and Debbie. But what do they think happened to Pete?
Yeah. Like, Pete didn't die in a way.
Break his own neck.
Yeah, die in a way that was a suicide fashion. It was definitely, yeah. It's, yeah.
Yeah. So Scott is talking about how you never really know what's going on inside someone. You think if you care about someone, you do, but you never really do. And I'm like, well, what do you think happened to him? Like,
yeah.
I'm curious as to what the official story is, like, floating around.
What was in the paper? What is the lead theory by the police force? Because it is,
I mean, I can believe that Sunnydale Police Force like turned it into a suicide.
Yeah.
Like they made it look like a suicide.
And that's probably truth. I mean, that's probably just what happened, is that it was presented as a murder-suicide, even though the suicide method does not make sense, but they spun it in a way that wasn't the way he died or whatnot.
Yeah.
Or they were like, oh, there was this weird green goo that apparently he drank that killed him,
Well, no one found that except Willow, obviously.
Oh, yeah. Willow's got that in her collection, her special closet.
So, and then we end on a scene of Angel sleeping on the ground, being haunted by dreams, and Buffy watching him with another voiceover.
Yes.
And that's how we end. And then at the beginning of the next episode, Scott breaks up with Buffy because that's what you do after both your best friends get murdered. You then break up with your girlfriend.
Can we talk a little bit? I mean, maybe it's just more the pros of it all is why they chose Call of the Wild. But why did they choose Call of the Wild to frame this episode?
Because Oz, Angel, and Pete were all wild. And this is a podcast, so you can't actually see me, but I totally used quotation marks with my hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm that cool.
Because that's
why.
Yeah. That's really it. Because it turns out that's a book about sled dogs. It has nothing to do with anything, but cool.
I'm aware, but the title is Call of the Wild.
Yeah.
So they're going with all three of these men felt the call of
They
the wild.
couldn't find like a single passage from
Dr.
Jekyll and Mr. Hyde that would have worked. They couldn't have found one.
Because that's a book I actually read in high school.
Yeah, these are seniors now, right? I feel like Call of the Wild's a little lower grade than what they're...
That's what I was thinking. I think I read that in like middle school. But Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which would have been perfect, was I think high school. I think it might have been like lower high school and not senior stuff, but it was at least high school.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway.
I think they're just honestly just going with the title.
Yeah.
And trying to connect it.
All right, so that was that episode. And I firmly stand on that. I don't really like this episode. I think it tries to do too much and doesn't really do any of it well.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Like, as I remembered it to be. Like, I remembered it being one of just those filler episodes. And it wasn't completely.
Yeah. So here's my other thing. And I'm not going to spend a lot on this because I know I'm going to get into this later. But I think the idea to bring Angel back is fine. I think that's a good idea. I think if they were going to have one person discover that Angel was alive and keep it from the others so they can try to figure out what's going on and how this happened and what version of Angel they're dealing with, it should have been Giles. I think having it be Buffy was the wrong decision.
I could see that. And also, if it was Giles, he would have had a valid reason to keep it from everyone.
Yeah.
Because he would be protecting Buffy.
Yeah. Like
that would have been perfect.
It just streamlines the whole thing, right? Like
yeah.
But like just imagine what that storyline would have been of Giles trying to figure this out and keep it from Buffy while Buffy's trying to move on from Angel, you know, and this kind of dynamic, knowing what Giles has been through. And maybe having a same conversation that they had between Giles and Buffy here, where Buffy had a prophetic dream, like it was actually a dream, that Angel came back, and Giles knows that he's back.
I think I would have enjoyed watching that more.
Yeah.
Although, if they had went that way, we would have not been able to see those two amazing scenes with Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Well, it would have happened eventually. Buffy would have eventually had those moments of discovering that. But I don't think she should have been the first one. Because I think it's just another way to put more friction in the Scoobies. Whereas I feel like Giles would have had a very valid reason to keep that secret. Whereas with Buffy, it just feels like a more friction creation.
Yeah.
And I think this goes back to one of the things that annoys me the most about Buffy the Vampire Slayer is that it is Buffy's show and everybody else is kind of sidelined. And so everybody interacts with Buffy, but you don't get a lot of the cast interacting with each other. You know? Buffy's almost always on screen, unless it's a storyline with Debbie and Pete, in which case we have huge, gaping long scenes of just the two of them. But most of the time, Buffy's on screen or being talked about or discussed in some way. She is the main focus of almost every scene in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I think it would have been like really interesting to have more dynamics like that, of having an interesting, long-running scenario where Angel's only scenes in the show were with Giles, you know? And to have Giles be the one to kind of try to see if he can come back from the brink. I don't know. It would have been interesting.
Yeah.
But I figure I'll talk about that more, because that will develop more as Angel's aliveness or undeadness on this realm become known to the rest of the Scoobies, because I'll think about it more. But that occurred to me in this episode for whatever reason. I was just like, that would have been cool. I like that idea. And so that's my ending note on Beauty and the Beasts, is that I would have redone this entire storyline. So yeah, it's not my favorite episode. Guarantee you that much.
Well, next week is Homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize Homecoming was so close to the beginning of season 3.
Yeah, that's an episode I honestly don't know what my opinion's gonna be. I could see myself going either way, honestly. Because I know I've talked about wanting Buffy and Cordelia, like, just wanting that relationship to just come together. and we finally get it, and I think I'm going to be upset about a lot of it.
Don't we? Isn't this the first one we see the mayor in, or do we not? Maybe.
Maybe, I don't know. I don't know
I
when
think
that
it
guy
might be.
shows up.
I could be wrong, though.
That would be exciting. We can talk about the mayor. This elusive mayor that Snyder keeps bringing up, and Joyce, and Giles, and all of these adults. They're all intimidated by this mayor. Who could it be? Oh, if only this podcast wasn't fully spoiled, then this would be like, ooh, intrigue. All right. Thank you all so much for listening. And this is where we say bye.
Bye. Did you hear that? Do I need to say it again?
Yeah, I gotcha.
I just had a loud tone in my earphones. I don't know what it was.
Weird. Yeah, I didn't hear any of that. I just heard your voice. Your voice was beautiful. You have a beautiful voice, Kim.
Yay.